In this module, we're going to look at bunkai, applications to the kata. Now, when we're applying the movements of the kata, as we discussed in the first module, training works on a number of different levels. Part of it is the actual combat technique, part of it is the self-awareness of your own body, so you know where every part of your body is, and part of it is training body mechanics. Now, when you come to applying the kata, as we discussed in the first module, we don't need to worry about learning the body mechanics because we've either learnt them or we haven't. We don't need to worry about the self-awareness. The only thing we really need to focus on is the self-defense application. Okay? When we're doing solo practice, that's when we worry about the self-awareness and the body mechanics. At this level, you know, we're looking more at an applied approach. So don't worry about, oh, my back stance is a little bit out, or my hands aren't in the right position. Things will kind of take a little bit of a life of their own, depending on what movement you're doing. If you're doing it with different opponents, sometimes you'll have to react differently to different opponents, and your body will end up in slightly different positions. Okay? Now, a couple of little rules. One is that when you're actually applying this with somebody, in the kata, a lot of them start off and they turn to the side. Now, originally they used to teach that if you're turning to the side, that means you're being attacked from the side. So you'd look and block the attacker. Now, there's a number of different faults with that. One is the range is all out, because if somebody's kicking me there, and I step forward there, the range is all out. And if somebody's going to attack me from there, the first thing I'm going to do is turn and face them. Okay, so I wouldn't be in that position of blocking to the side anyway. So if I can bow pull for a second. So when in a kata you turn to the side, it doesn't mean that the attack's coming from the side. It means that you turn to the side of your opponent. So originally when people were, if people were looking at sparring, okay, the idea of getting to his side is quite a long way to get to his side. It wouldn't work. Okay, but if we're looking much more close quarters, okay, well, that's it. So we're doing this 45 degrees to the camera. So if I want to get to his side from close quarters, now is quite easy. Okay, and most applications are relatively close quarters. So when I turn to the side in the kata, it means I go to the side of the opponent, or it could mean that I take on a side-on perspective to the opponent. So rather than turning to the side to face an opponent to the side, if we take like a Heian knee down, for example, it could mean that I'm turning side-on relative to Paul. So I'm either turning side-on or I'm going to his side, okay? It doesn't mean that the attack is coming from the side. Some people think that they've got to perform the application exactly as it is in the kata. So if the kata says you're in this stance, they think I've got to be in this stance. No, it might mean you could be in any stance, it doesn't really matter. Funakoshi said that low grades use formal stances, higher grades use natural stances. Now, I might be in a situation, for example, where I'm applying an arm lock to Paul. Okay, we discussed this one in module 1. I'll put an arm lock on. If, for example, I'm getting a bit of resistance and I can't do it from there, I might want to just step across there and do it so I can get a bit more leverage. Because the kata does certain steps and steps in a certain way, it doesn't mean you've got to stand there. If it helps you to move around while you're applying whatever application it is, then move around. Move with it. Don't feel you've got to stand on the spot, because that's what the kata does. Because the solo kata is teaching you body mechanics and self-awareness. Okay? We're not worried about that at this stage. So if you're in a position where you're struggling to get something on and you need to move to the side, move to the side. Okay? Don't be static within the kata or within the applications. Sometimes people feel they have to follow the order of the movements in the kata. You don't, Okay, I might start off with doing an application from, so we say Heian Shodan, get him in a vulnerable position, then I might swap to Heian Nidan or Bosai Dai and do an application from there. Okay, I don't need to follow the things in that particular order that the kata tells us to. I don't even have to stay within the same kata. I can jump from kata to kata with applications. I can jump from different parts of the kata. Okay, the kata is there to give us like, if you like, a menu of techniques. That's not the right, a catalogue of techniques. So that gives us a catalogue of techniques and principles. When we've learned those principles and those techniques, then we can apply them in any order we like, in any situation we like, depending on where you end up with your opponents. If I'm doing it someone big and strong like Paul, sometimes you put an arm lock on, he doesn't go all the way down, so maybe you want to hit him. If you've got someone who's a bit smaller, a bit lighter, you put an arm lock on, very often they go all the way down to the floor. So you put something, you maybe just sort of restrain him in that position. So you've got to adapt to whatever situation you're in and however your partner reacts to your technique. Okay? Another way you've got to approach your kata is you've got to realise that different katas were created at different times and the masters had different ways of expressing the same ideas. So the applications that we'll show in this module, if you're of a different style, you may perform the movement slightly different. So what I would say to you is don't look for the exact movement in your own katas, patterns, forms, whatever your style calls them. Look for something similar that will work in the same way. So if I borrow James, for example, just stand that way, please, facing me. Yes. Thank you. Right. If, for example, you've got a situation where he does a cross grab, okay, now, sensitively, put your hand up, please. So that's the threat, that's the hand that's going to hit me, that's the hand that's trying to restrain me. It makes a lot of sense for me to just come around 45 degrees, I've got my line on there, all my limbs are lined up to come in, his limbs are now facing the wrong way, so that's a good way for me to move. Now, one master may describe that like a down block. So I come up, come down like a down block, and I've got my line there. Another master may describe it with that kind of movement. So if you grab again, I might come around, exactly the same position. Okay? Another one may describe it like a back fist strike. So if he grabs, tighter, thank you. So I come around, just flick it around like a back fist strike. Now, all those different things, doing it like a down block, like a back fist strike, like this slow, they all do exactly the same purpose. So when you're looking at the applications that we're doing in this module, and you're looking at your katas, don't necessarily look for an exact same movement. Look for something similar that will do the same job. Okay? Right, as we're going through the bunkai, the applications to the kata, there's a couple of things to bear in mind how you should approach it. First of all, start with your partner, do it slowly, okay? Learn the mechanics, learn the dynamics, learn how you move the other person, okay? Then as you get more and more used to it, then gradually build up the speed, and then when you're quite used to it, the attacker should give a lot more resistance, okay? You should pressure test it to make sure that it actually works under pressure. In these videos, we're not going to do the pressure testing, okay? I basically want to give you the ideas that you can take away and you can train. So I'm just going to show, we're going to show the movements fairly slowly so that you know what we're doing and what we're trying to get across. Then it's up to you, like I say, to practice them, and then as you get more used to them, then pressure test them.